It's your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back in the Daily Delivery chair for another day. Hope you guys are having a good one out there as well. Plenty to get to on today's show, as there often is this time of year. Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, joins me here in just a little bit. Two subjects that I wanted to engage Chip on today. Number one, the Timberwolves. Number two, the Wild. Those are the two teams we're really paying a lot of attention to right now, as they, the Wolves right in the thick of postseason play. And I consider the play in postseason, even if we're not designating that as playoffs, and even if the statistics for that kind of disappear into the ether, the play-in is still postseason, right? It's after the regular season. You're trying to get into the playoffs, and this is still meaningful basketball, maybe even more so than some playoff games end up being. So I got Chip on the Wolves heading into Friday's big game. Now we know that's against Oklahoma City, which beat New Orleans in the other play-in game, the 9-10 game in the West on Wednesday night. So it will be Oklahoma City at the Wolves, 8:30 p.m. Friday. Chip and I will talk through the Wolves, where they stand after blowing that lead to the Lakers, and just kind of where this whole thing sits after a very eventful last few days. Also engaged Chip on a discussion of the Wild, their goalie situation, and just kind of where they stand heading into the postseason now, with a lot of injuries mounting and some questions for that team as well. We'll also get to an interesting Gophers tennis story at the end of today's show. First, though, what did I miss? So I was at Target Field on Wednesday. First time I had been to a game this season. Hadn't made it over for the Houston series. Scheduling conflicts kept me away, but I wanted to at least get over there sometime for the first homestand. I didn't have a full day to do it yesterday, but I got over there for what in the past might have been about a third of the game, and in this case turned out to be more like a half of the game, and I want to talk about that in a little bit, just because I hadn't felt the rule changes fully yet, right? Like you can understand the pitch clock, you can watch it on TV, you see the giant digital clock in some of the frames, and you understand that the game is moving faster. But when you're watching on TV, you're probably a little bit more distracted than you are at the ballpark, right? You're at the ballpark, at least. Your senses are engaged on a lot of different things from time to time, but you're more or less you've decided you're going to go to this place to watch a game. You're not as easily perhaps distracted or prone to multitask as you are when you are at a game. Now, I hadn't been to a game yet this year, so I wanted to feel what it felt like to be at a game, to understand what it felt like to be part of this kind of new experiment in baseball with the pitch clock. So I went and just kind of tried to remember, tried to kind of take down what felt different, what felt the same, and it was just really interesting. I think Phil Miller and I have talked about this on the podcast before, and I think he was right when he said, you don't necessarily feel it in the middle of the game unless you're kind of focused in on the clock. And to be fair, I was kind of locked in on the clock because I wanted to see how far pitchers take it down to the number, if there's any kind of gamesmanship that goes on to try to steal some seconds here and there, if pitchers or hitters are kind of wanting to gain a little bit of an edge or feel like they need a little bit of a mental reset. But was watching in the first inning in particular, watching Sonny Gray operate. He was working so fast that right around the 6 or 7 second mark. So, really 8 seconds or so after getting the ball back from Ryan Jeffers, he was already into his windup again in that 15-second nobody on base pitch clock, and he was just in a really quick rhythm, getting into a quick groove, and it was just interesting to watch because it's I think you would notice sometimes before if a pitcher was working fast, and it felt good. It felt like there was a flow to the game, and now everybody works that way. And, this is a novelty to me because I hadn't seen it. You guys, maybe some of you have been to a game already this season. You're like, yeah, we get it. We've experienced the same thing. To me, it was experiencing this for the first time. So I thought that piece was interesting, that the rhythm, the pace all of a sudden feels faster, but you don't miss the in-between time. You don't miss the time that's gone, that's been eliminated. You don't miss the guys stepping out of the box, adjusting their batting gloves. You don't miss the pitcher stalking around the mound. You don't miss that at all because that's time that's just essentially wasted. That's time that's really not a part of any meaningful action. And, the other thing I've thought about is how this is kind of how games used to be, right? This is not changing baseball into something that it never was. This is kind of a correction to this time creep that's happened over the years. Baseball has never had a clock like this, but it used to occur naturally like this, where pitchers and batters would work this fast. So it felt to me like the pace was natural, even if it was a little bit foreign from what has been experienced in the past several years and even decades. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, just the fact that it didn't feel forced, that it felt natural to me was important. Now, I did feel like Sonny Gray a couple times would throw a pitch and then kind of turn around and kind of walk back slowly to the mound, so he couldn't get the ball back from the catcher. And then the clock doesn't start until he catches the ball from the catcher. But as soon as he catches it, that 15 seconds is ready to go, starting up again. And so I thought that piece of it was fairly interesting as well. Now, like I said, I didn't have time for a full game. I just wanted to experience this a little bit. I went. Unfortunately, one of the last things I saw was Kyle Farmer getting hit by that pitch in the jaw. That was a terrible sight to see. It sounds like the jaw is not broken somehow. Rocco Baldelli calling that some sort of miracle. Hopefully he's okay and will be back on the field relatively soon. But yeah, you just looked at that and you looked at the injuries now mounting for the Twins, like Lavelle E. Neal III wrote about. You already have Max Kepler out, Joey Gallo out, Carlos Correa out, and to start the year, you already had Alex Kirilloff and Jorge Polanco. I mean, that's a lot of offensive firepower already missing. And, this is a team that overhauled its training staff before the year in hopes of avoiding the same sorts of injury catastrophes they had last year. Now, even Byron Buxton had to leave this game early. Looks like he's going to be okay, but you never know with him. Like, the injuries mounting already for this team. It's a good thing that they can pitch because the hitting is taking a beating right now, but they are 8-4 right now after that win, 3-1 against the White Sox. But usually if I go to a game and I have a little over an hour to spend, in this case I could be there for about an hour and 10 minutes before I knew I had to head out and get back for another work engagement. So I leave after an hour and 10 minutes, and it was after 4 innings, about to go into the 5th inning. Now, in the past, I've done similar things, and I feel like in the past, a lot of the times, and maybe this is just remembering the worst, but in the past, I feel like a lot of times that would have gotten me through 3 innings at the most. These games that used to drag, especially these day games where it's hot, and yesterday was hot. It was hot, especially for, it was record temperatures here for April 12th yesterday, but it was just plain hot if you were out at that game. Those games can drag on. They can feel longer than they even are. But getting to see almost half the game by being there barely over an hour was a new experience as well, and it makes me want to go back to watch more. And obviously I'll go back to watch more as a member of the working media. But in this case, I was just kind of there to feel what it felt like, to kind of check out how fans seem to be engaging with the game. I was kind of walking around the perimeter, watch from different vantage points like I like to do, like a lot of people like to do. And by the way, those people have more time to drink. I wrote about that yesterday. Twins have extended beer sales into the 8th inning now because games are moving so fast. We will see what the consequences or the results of that are as time goes on, but giving people more of a chance to consume because the games are shorter. These are just interesting things we're going to watch all throughout the year, but it felt good to be at a game that was moving a lot faster, and that to me is the bottom line right now.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
All right, let's bring in Star Tribune columnist Chip Scoggins right now, who, judging by our pre-recording conversation, has some strong feelings about the Timberwolves game, and judging by his column that appeared in Wednesday's paper, also has some opinions about how the Wild should proceed in goal in the playoffs once those start here in just a few days. So I want to get Chip on both of those subjects. Chip, I went fairly long on the Wolves coming off of that game, but having kind of a little bit of a time to let it simmer a little bit, let it settle down. I'm still just as fired up. So I want to hear you first, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's going in, they're shorthanded, and it's going to be a tough ask. But it also, and I'll preface this by saying I didn't get to see the first three quarters because I was riding off the Wild, but I got home right at the end of the third quarter. But following it on Twitter and on the radio on the way home, sounds like they were doing everything they wanted to do offensively. It sounded like the typical Timberwolves, where when you think something's going to happen, they do the exact opposite, and they were playing well. The offense was really flowing. The ball was moving. Cat was making shots. And so when you get a 15-point lead, it's hard to come back and have a moral victory that you kept it closer for overtime. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's just, I mean, we've seen this too many times. What was the stat they put up there that they've had the most 10-point?
Yeah, I think it's 18 blown leads of 10 points or more this year.
Yeah, and that was the game, Mike. Those final 2 minutes were awful.
Terrible.
But between the shots, the turnovers, just the sloppy play. I mean, it felt like the Lakers doing everything in their power to give the Wolves that victory, and they just could not take it. And just the offense, how stagnant it became. And I thought the TNT crew, Barkley and Shaq, and then did a good job with the breakdowns after the game, where they showed the switching that the Lakers did.
Yeah,
creating some mismatches, and the Wolves just did not take advantage of that. I thought Cat became really tentative and settled.
Yes.
Now that probably had to do with the fact that he was in foul trouble.
Yes.
And it was worried about fouling out, so that affected the way he played. But I mean, to get 2 shots in fourth quarter and overtime, I mean, it's just not going to work. Missed opportunity. I mean, absolutely a missed opportunity.
Well, yes, absolutely. The missed opportunity is kind of the way you have to frame it, and just how bad they were down the stretch of that game. Alan Horton, the excellent Wolves radio guy, tweeted a couple stats that were just mind-boggling. The Wolves were 0 for 9 with 4 turnovers from the field over the final 6 minutes of regulation, and still were able to get to overtime because Conley made those 3 free throws. And over the final 11 minutes of the fourth quarter and overtime, they missed 14 of their 16 shots and had 8 turnovers in that span. I mean,
that's because the Lakers were equally bad.
Yes.
I mean, the turnovers and missed shots that they had. I mean, they turned the ball over twice trying to inbound the ball.
Yes. Yes, gave the Wolves a chance. Yes.
I mean, it was just, as I tweeted, is like, just because something is dramatic doesn't mean it's being well played.
I know. I know.
It was like, no, you take it. I'll take it. You take it. It just went back and forth. I mean, Kyle Anderson dribbles the ball off his foot and has a backcourt violation.
Right.
Dorian Prince throws airmails one into the stands.
Yes.
It was so sloppy. And I think that's where the frustration comes from, is that game was there. I mean, it wasn't like the Lakers just overpowered them. They made a shot, there, and then Anthony Davis gives them a gift by, bumping Mike Conley there in the corner.
Yes.
So, but the offense becoming stagnant and not figuring out a way to take advantage when they switched off on Cat, and they had Reeves, who's, I don't know how much shorter and lighter than he is than Cat, but they just did not take advantage of it. And I didn't see this. I saw the replay of Ant's spiel, but clearly was not right. And that's a concern going into Friday night too, is like, where is he at physically? Because he was just not right. You could tell that. It was obvious.
Yeah. I mean, he missed shots that he normally makes. He was very tentative in that fourth quarter, especially just kind of noting that he, probably didn't feel like he was fully capable physically. But even before he took that spill, he was not having a very active game. And, maybe some of that is that Cat was rolling, Conley was rolling. He was taking kind of a third wheel approach, but he's someone they lean on so heavily in those crunch time situations. And whenever he got the ball, he was looking to pass out of it, even when he wasn't double teamed. And that was the thing that tells you something must not have been right with him physically in that game. But, and those guys were probably gassed at the end. I mean, all the starters played 40 plus minutes, I think, because it went into overtime, and because the bench is so thin. They tried Nate Knight for like 2 minutes. That was a disaster. That was all they could do. He was like a -7 in 2 minutes. They had to be like, nope, get him out of here.
Yeah.
I thought Nikhil Alexander-Walker gave them good minutes, but, beyond that, off the bench, they just didn't really have a whole lot going, and Noel was okay, but just in general, they had no depth with the injuries they have, and obviously the Gobert suspension. But here's the thing, Chip. The thing that I will say beyond that is, they got a lot of calls in the first half. In particular, they got the call on Davis on that foul on Conley, which could have gone either way. I don't know how much he definitely got into his space. I think that was the correct call, but I don't think they would have been screaming if that hadn't been made. To say after the game, to start complaining about the officiating after the game again, for Finch to say, Cat was in a real rhythm until they whistled him to the bench, and just the whole thing with this team complaining about officiating. I'm done with it. That game was not won or lost because of officiating. It was won or lost because you could not execute a single offensive possession in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that is not the time to start complaining about the officiating. I didn't see I just saw it on Twitter when Cat had the back-to-back, what do you have, fouls in the first half within 10 seconds or so. The fifth one where he pulls down Anthony Davis on the rebound, that's a foul.
That was a foul. Yep.
That's absolutely a foul. When you have, I think they finished with 24 turnovers, Mike. There's 45 turnovers in that game. 45.
Yeah, so sloppy.
But when you have 24 turnovers and you shoot the way they do, and your offense is as ineffective as it was, don't complain about the officiating. I mean, this whole idea that the officials are out to get – a couple weeks ago, Rudy Gobert literally said the officials were in on it to help the Sacramento Kings beat them.
Yeah.
The Sacramento Kings, come on. I mean, they have to stop with this martyrdom because it's
right.
self-fulfilling. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. It absolutely is.
And it's in their head, and they complain so much, and it's just so distracting. And I'm sorry, let's not go with it. When you play that poorly down the stretch in the fourth quarter and overtime, you forfeit the right to complain about the officiating.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think that the missed opportunity is that Memphis is clearly, I would think, a better matchup for them than Denver. Denver's just so good. So, Jokic is beyond this world. And the missed opportunity is they would have been in no matter what if they win that game. And now they're still fighting for their playoff lives in this Friday game. Now it's, they could still get in and play Denver. And I think they could make a series out of it because I don't think Denver is great. I think Denver is very good, but Denver has been vulnerable in the playoffs. But where do you see this team regrouping after losing that game, now reincorporating Gobert, having an uncertainty about Ant's physical status? I mean, he was wearing the tape in that game after he took that spill. Yeah. I mean, what's your outlook for Friday now?
Well, I've given up trying to figure out this team.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, if anybody that bets on this team is a fool, because they can look great, they can look horrible, they can, and I have no idea how they're going to play Friday. The one, caution I have is just not knowing where Ant is physically.
Yes.
Chris Finch said after game that he was cramping. So I don't know if that played a bigger role than him falling on his, on his shoulder, but he just wasn't right.
No, he was not.
So can he get himself back physically, in a couple days here? He's young, so you hope so, but I this team can play so well at times, but then they always find a way to have that stretch where they just completely unravel. And so you talk about, is this matchup good or that matchup good? I just have no faith in them because they just seem to always kind of implode. Even when they're playing well, they'll have the ball will start sticking.
Yeah.
They just have these lapses. So, I think for them, probably you'd rather play Memphis than Denver, but they got to win a game here. And I think they'll win that game, even if Ant is not, 100% or, 80% or whatever he's at. I still think getting Go Barry back will help him defensively. And then obviously if Cat can have a performance like he did the first three quarters or the first half. But I this team is so hard to figure out, Mike. I honestly don't know what Wolves we're going to see on Friday night.
No, it will be at home, so at least they have that going for them. But yeah, you're right. And they, the other missed opportunity is with guys banged up, with guys maybe gassed at the end of this season carrying extra load. I mean, you would have had an extra few days of no games, rest, and now you're going to have to play Friday, and then you're going to turn around if you win that game, and you're going to open that series Sunday in Denver at altitude. So good luck with all that. Chip, let's shift gears. You were at the Wild game, like you said. You wrote about the goalies, and I think you wrote about it in a sensible way. I think a lot of us who have just been watching this team say it's got to be Gustafson, at least in game one, and probably more, assuming he plays well. Fleury's got the credentials. It would have been absurd to think at the beginning of this season that the goalies would have flip-flopped in their kind of pedigree, but here we are. Gustafson's been one of the best goalies in the league this year. He hasn't had the workload of some of the other top goalies, but he's played enough down the stretch and has played well enough in big games against good teams, has been consistent enough all year. It just feels obvious, except for the fact that they seem to love Fleury.
Well, that's it. And I think if we just look at it as a practical matter, there was so much mystery going into that game one last year. But I think if we step back and look at it, it's like, Billy Guerin was not going to trade for a future Hall of Famer to have him sit at the deadline, to have him sit on the bench in game one. It just wasn't going to happen. By the same token, let's use that same logic. Gustafson has the second best statistics of any goalie right now.
Yeah.
You're gonna put that guy on the bench? I mean, no. I mean, I know he doesn't have the playoff pedigree and resume that Fleury does, but he's been better. He's earned it. He's been a better goalie, and he's been a more consistent goalie. So to me, it's I think it's logical. I think it's going to happen. But what I do think Dean Evason learned from last year is, you can make a switch before panicking before game 6, when you're facing an elimination game. They erred in letting Fleury have the first 5 games and then going to Talbot last year. I think they will have a rotation, but I think when we say rotation, it's not, it's not going to be Gustafson Fleury like that. It's
right.
If you lose, go to Fleury. If he doesn't play well, go to Fleury. If he plays poorly, you go back. You basically ride the hot hand, knowing you have a guy that you trust. So I think they'll definitely both play, but I just don't think there's any question who the game one starter should be.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And, I think one thing that you can point to with Gustafson, even if he doesn't have the kind of background or pedigree in these big games, A, you got to start somewhere, and B, his style is one that, he's not of the spectacular save. He's not of the kind of up and down. You're not trying to like catch lightning in a bottle here. The thing that's been really good about him this year is that he's been so steady, that he's just in the right place. Like the puck just seems to hit him. Like that's kind of what you need in the playoffs. Whereas Fleury, I get it. He's done it before. He makes spectacular saves, but he's kind of all over the map. And sometimes that's a little unsettling in the playoffs to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's really stood out about Gustafson, just how calm he's been. Just kind of, steady. I mean, he's been a rock in there. I mean, there's been a couple blips, but he's just, Mike, it just comes down to he's had a better season. He's been better.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, don't overthink this and think, well, we got to go with the guy who has playoff experience and he's a future Hall of Fame. No, go with the guy who's been better. And I think it's, I think they will. And I think it's, I think Dean has a pretty good plan in mind. The thing I would worry about is, Mike, they're getting beat up now.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he's, and you got Kirill back and he scored last night, and Dean said he thought he got better as the game went on. But, losing Eck.
Eck is huge. Yeah.
That is a massive blow. And then, Johansson, who's just been great for him since arriving, he has to leave in final 30 seconds for, a cheap shot to the ribs on a cross check. I mean, we don't know his status. Dean didn't have an update right after the game. So, they're crossing their fingers, and that's not a major injury. But if I'm Dean, I take my minor league team to Nashville on Thursday night. No starters are playing in that game.
No need.
There's no need. Just, do your best to get as healthy as you can going into the playoffs. And I wouldn't run the risk of – I know they want to you want to kind of be confident in the way you're playing going into the playoffs. But to me, with what's happening right now, I'd rather just have guys fresh and avoid the injury risk on Thursday.
Let's finish with this. My minimum expectation a couple of weeks ago for this to be a successful season for the Wolves and the Wild was the Wolves had to make the playoffs, not just play in, and the Wild needed to win a series. I think my confidence level is a little higher in the Wolves, even though the bar is lower for the Wolves. Where are you at with both of those things? I think you already said you think the Wolves win Friday. You think the Wild can win a series, whoever they're going to play against?
I do think the Wolves will win. I think they'll get in. The Wild's interesting because we know hockey's weird, and if you get a hot goal, you can steal it. But I think that losing Eck, that's a big blow. You wonder if Goudreau's going to be able to if that Boldy and now Johansson, if he's not injured, if that line, because they're going to need two lines to score, if that line can continue to produce. Can he win? Sure, because you have a good defensive structure. They're a good defensive team. You have a goalie who's played well. Now he has to prove it in, and you have a superstar.
Yeah.
Who, yes, he's still coming back, but if Kirill gets hot, so yeah, you absolutely can win a series. But Mike, with this year always felt like a transition year for them with what they were doing with the salary cap problems they had with the Breezy Suter things. I didn't have a high bar to begin with them because I felt like this was sort of a transition period for them.
Yeah.
So that's not to lower expectations or anything, but I always felt like this is going to be kind of a pivot year where they're trying to get out from under these penalties and still stay competitive while they're giving young players an opportunity to grow and then make that leap here in a couple years. So, but it wouldn't surprise me if they won a series, but it also would surprise me if they don't.
Yeah, well, the bar probably changed a little bit when they got on that hot streak, but I don't know if that was all. How sustainable that was, how good this team really is. I guess we'll find out in the playoffs how much they've grown. They've had competitive series each of the last 2 years. I think that's the bare minimum expectation. But I think to feel like this is a successful season, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. It would be an acceptable season, but not a successful one if they don't win a series this year. I don't think.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, at some point, you got to win a series. Just get to the playoffs, getting knocked out in the first round is getting pretty old. But so we'll see. I mean, but these injuries, are starting to stack up on them here.
Yeah, they are. All right, Chip, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. We'll see you.
Like I said, at the jump, the Timberwolves will play Oklahoma City Friday night. Timberwolves, by the way, were the only team of the 4 play-in games so far that did not win as the road team, and they certainly could have and probably should have against the Lakers. The Thunder won. The Bulls beat the Raptors, and then of course the previous night you had the Hawks beating the Heat. So interesting so far in that regard that 3 of the 4 road teams have won. Now, another interesting facet of this, the Thunder, even after winning that game, have a losing record overall this year, 41-42. That doesn't count on their regular season record, but I'm just going to add it to their regular season record, 41-42. And what that means for the Wolves is that's actually not good news. They had a losing record against teams with a losing record this year, and they had a winning record against teams with a winning record this year, in a complete anomaly. Now that there's good news in this, it's that they were 3-1 against the Thunder this season. They played reasonably well against the Thunder, but these teams have not played for a very long time. The last time these teams played was December 16th, a 112-110 Timberwolves win at Oklahoma City. So these are completely different teams from the ones that faced each other the last time they were able to play way back in December, mid-December. So I don't really know what to make of this game. I think the Thunder have nothing to lose. One of the youngest teams in all of the NBA history, bringing in a lot of energy. You would think the Wolves will be able to kind of exert their veteran will in this game, especially if Rudy Gobert is back, especially if they get some veteran performances again from Mike Conley Jr., Karl Anthony Towns. He's a veteran now too. If they can get those kinds of steady performances, they can come out on top, and they should come out on top in this game. I think Oklahoma City is going to be a very good team in years to come, but probably here a year early. But I'd be worried if I was the Wolves because The flip side of that is this is a team essentially playing with house money, nothing to lose, playing very loose, playing very well, and that energy, that youthful energy, bringing that against a team that's feeling some pressure, feeling the need to get into the postseason, like Chris Hine wrote about and tweeted about the other night. This is a team feeling a lot of pressure just to get into the playoffs, given everything they've given up, given everything they've done to get to this point. That pressure, we'll see how they use that pressure in Friday's game. Let's finish with the cooler. I can't remember this happening in Gophers sports history, but the tennis team announced Wednesday, the women's tennis team, that it's canceling the rest of their season because they only have 3 healthy players left on the team. Injuries just completely decimating that team. You'd think they were, it sounds like they're the Twins, not the Gophers women's tennis team. But I think they had 5 matches left. They have to forfeit. They have to cancel. They only had 7 players on the roster for the season. They were 5-12, and they'd lost 8 straight, 0-8 in the Big Ten when they had 4 healthy players. But now that they're down to 3, they're going to forfeit their final 5 conference matches and not participate in the Big Ten tournament. So that is an interesting development out of Gopherland. Hope they can get healthy for next season and beyond. But yeah, I can't remember a Gopher team having to forfeit, having to shut down its season because of a lack of healthy players. Hopefully that does not happen again. That will do it for me today. Should have a special guest, Bob Timmons, who writes great stuff about the outdoors for the Star Tribune. He has a terrific piece that will be online Friday about the 10-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon that's coming up early next week. I'm going to talk to Bob about that piece, about the 10-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing, and just kind of where we are with that, Minnesotans who are running, who ran already. And so I'm really looking forward to that conversation on Friday, and I hope you will as well. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Thanks for joining me on Daily Delivery today. Back at it again tomorrow.